Hey everyone, so in this video I'll be talking about the most overpowered runes in League of Legends and how to abuse them. I think a lot of the runes on this list are very misunderstood about why they're good and when to take them, but you can get a lot of use out of them. I will be leaving out some runes from this list that I think you guys already know about, such as Conditioning Overgrowth, very strong scaling option, as well as Time Warp Tonic against skill shot matchups. I've talked about these a lot, so I'll leave them out, but let's get into it. Starting off, we have a combination of runes with Absolute Focus and Gathering Storm. In Season 12, with games going longer and early game power being less important, sometimes you can get away with the extra scaling AD or AP. I'd highly recommend doing this on ADC champions, especially ones that build Infinity Edge, or on mages that will be building Rabadon. By the time you hit your big spikes, you have a lot of extra damage to go with it, and it really lets you take over the mid game. It's definitely a greedy page, so you shouldn't take it if you're going to get punished really heavily in the early game for it, but if you can reach the mid game in an even state, you'll be rewarded very heavily for it. If you want even more AD or AP, you can combine this with Eyeball Collection, Ghost Poro, or Zombie Ward, and you'll have a crazy amount of extra stats. I will give a shout out here to the Conditioning Overgrowth combination, which is also very good scaling, and I think most people know about this already, but with all the extra tank stats granted by the durability patch, I feel like it's not needed as much as before, although it remains a pretty good option. Next up is Minion Dematerializer. I think this is probably the most misunderstood rune in the entirety of League of Legends. There are two main ways you can use this. So as you know from my roaming video, the best time to roam is after pushing a cannon wave, and this is made significantly easier by using your Minion Demat on the cannon creep, since that normally takes the longest to kill. One strategy that I really like to use on roaming champs is after I hit level 6, I demat the next 3 cannon waves and look for roams on these windows. Another way to use Minion Demat is to allow you to clear ranged and or melee creeps faster. So for example, if Ari uses Minion Demat on the ranged creeps, she can often clear the backline of creeps with a single Q 1 level earlier, depending on how much AP you have, and this saves a significant amount of time and also makes farming a lot easier. There are some champions that can kind of get access to method CSing, as I've talked about before, through Minion Demat, and many champs are like this, so I'd really recommend trying out Minion Demat in practice tool on your main champion and seeing what kind of effect it has. Futures Market is really useful on champions that are trying to hit a key spike on their first base or are trying to get to their first core item as quickly as possible. So champions that rush Lost Chapter, Noon Quiver, or even Serrated Dirk will find it quite a lot easier to reach this on their first base with Futures Market. It can be a really good way to snowball the early game if you can get a significant power spike on your first base and your opponent doesn't. This is especially useful in matchups where you already have a lead and so get to choose when to base, and will also most likely base with more gold than your opponent. Getting these spikes early can also speed up your farming a lot by giving you access to method CSing with the extra AP or AD that you get. A final way to use Futures Market is by optimizing your runes to rush your first core item. So Xerath, for example, goes with First Strike, Magical Boots, Futures Market, and Treasure Hunter to try and get as much gold as possible, as well as save the money on boots and pick up your first core item extremely early in the game. Obviously not every champion can use First Strike, but for many champions that do spike hard on one item, it can still be a nice choice to take the other rune. Bone Plating or Second Wind can be absolutely key to surviving or even playing aggressively in certain matchups. Against champions that have short trading windows, such as assassins, as long as they don't have an effective way to proc bone plating, it can be very difficult for them to actually engage on you. Many champions already need to wait for you to waste certain cooldowns, and adding bone plating on top of that can make things very difficult for them. If you're playing a champion that can engage on your opponent whenever you choose, for example Akshan with his E or Tristana with her W, you can time your trades around bone plating and make it really difficult for your opponent to trade back against you. Second Wind can also be very effective against champions that trade often and need to poke you down, for example Lucian, Syndra, or Orianna. It's also pretty good against damage over time champions like Cassio because you get a lot of extra Second Wind ticks. This is more of a rune needed for melee champions, but there are some matchups which are virtually unwinnable without it. Lastly, we have Ghost Power. This one is quite specific, but I feel like the best way to get use out of this rune is if you have a lot of priority over your matchup and can often deep ward your opponent's camps. While a lot of the wards that are placed in the early game exist mainly to give you safety, a lot of the time the jungler will cross sides and so your Ghost Power won't spot them anymore once they actually switch. If you can drop wards on camps though, oftentimes you'll be able to double dip with your wards, seeing them the first time and Ghost Power seeing this the second time. Obviously, this isn't always going to be the case, they could recall or do something different, but it can help provide a lot of extra information to your team about the enemy jungler's movements. Another way you can use it is just to ward the river bushes where it might spot out more people than just the jungler, like the enemy support or perhaps the mid laner roaming. This means that warding bot side with Ghost Poro is typically going to be better if you decide to ward the river instead of jungle camps. So everyone, that's going to be it for this video. I hope you enjoyed and hopefully you take something away from it. Personally, I've had a lot of success with the Absolute Focus Gathering Storm combo as well as Futures Market lately, so those picks were definitely inspired by my recent games. If you did like the video, go ahead and like and subscribe, and if you have another top 5 that you might have me to do or something else you'd like me to cover, please let me know. Always looking for new ideas, and so that'll be it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.